Childe Rowland. Once upon a time, long ago, there was a queen in England, and she had 3 bold sons and 1 fair daughter. One evening the 3 princes and Burd Ellen, their sister, were out playing with their golden ball, and as they played, the youngest son, Childe Rowland, sent the ball up so hard that it flew over the church roof. Off ran their sister Burd Ellen to fetch the ball back again. The 3 princes waited, but Burd Ellen neither came nor called. Then they went to find her, but search as they would, call as they would, there was no sign of her nor of the ball, and their hearts grew heavy, for they feared that she must have fallen into some evil enchantment. So at last, after they had sought her east and sought her west, and all in vain, and when the queen their mother could do no more but sit on her golden throne and weep, the eldest brother said that he would go and ask the advice of Merlin, the most famous of all the enchanters of Britain. So out he set, and when he got to the enchanter's cave, he told Merlin the whole tale, how they 4 had been playing with their golden ball, and how Childe Rowland, the youngest prince, had sent it high over the church roof, and how their sister, Burd Ellen, had run round, calling out to them that she would fetch it back, and how no one had seen her since that day. Then he asked the enchanter if he could tell what had become of her. Merlin asked the prince which way round Burd Ellen had run, and when the prince answered, Merlin nodded his head. "Burd Ellen," said Merlin, "has fallen under an enchantment because she went round the church widdershins, that is, the contrary way to the sun. By my art I know that the king of Elfland has carried her off, and that he has taken her to his dark tower. Hard will it be to win her back." "If it is possible, if it is a thing that mortal man may do," said the prince, "I will try." "Possible it is," said Merlin, "but woe to the man that tries unless he is well taught beforehand. Boldness is not all." Then the eldest prince begged Merlin to tell him what he must do and what he must not do. Then, after Merlin had taught him, and after he had repeated his lesson, the eldest prince said farewell to the queen and his 2 brothers, and rode off on the road to Elfland. But long they waited, and longer still, with doubt and muckle pain, and woe were the hearts of his brethren, for he came not back again. After many days had passed, the 2nd brother said that he would try, and he went to the enchanter Merlin, and asked his help to get his sister again, just as his brother had done. He was given the very same teaching as to how a mortal man might win her back, and off he set to ride to Elfland. But long they waited, and longer still, with muckle doubt and pain, and woe were his mother's and brother's hearts, for he came not back again. At last, after many days, Childe Rowland, the youngest prince, wanted to go. So he went to his mother, the good queen, to ask her blessing. But at first she would not let him go, for he was the last of her children, and if he were lost, all would be lost. But he begged so long that at last the queen said he might go, and since he was their last hope, she gave him his father's good sword that never struck in vain. As she buckled the sword belt round his waist, the queen said the spell that would give the sword victory, and then, as his brothers had done, Childe Rowland rode to Merlin's enchanted cave. "Once more, and but once more, we come to you," said Childe Rowland when he stood before Merlin. "Tell me how a mortal man may rescue the fair Burd Ellen and my 2 brothers." Merlin taught him as he had taught his brothers. "My son," said he, "there are 2 things, simple as they may seem, but hard they are to do. One is something that you must do, and one is something that you must not do. The thing you must do is this. After you have entered the kingdom of Elfland, whoever speaks to you till you see the fair Burd Ellen, you must out with your sword, and you must cut off his head. The other is a thing you must not do. However hungry or thirsty you may be, you must drink no drop, nor eat 1 bite of food while you are in Elfland. If you do, you will never see Middle-earth again." Then Merlin told him how he must set out to find Elfland and the Dark Tower, and that it was the elf king himself who must be forced to tell him what had become of his two brothers. Childe Rowland thanked the enchanter and rode out on the way that his two brothers had ridden and that Merlin had told him. He went and he went till at last he came to where a horseherd was sitting with many horses feeding all round him. Childe Rowland could see by their wildness and their fiery eyes that these must be the horses of Elfland. "Can you tell me," said Childe Rowland to the horseherd, "where to find the dark tower of the King of Elfland?" "I cannot tell," said the horseherd, "but go on a little farther and you will see a cowherd. Maybe he can tell you." Then, without a word more, Childe Rowland drew his father's good sword that never struck in vain, and off went the horseherd's head. Childe Rowland went on farther till he came to the cowherd, and he asked him the same question. "I cannot tell," said the cowherd, "but go on a little farther and you will come to the henwife. She is sure to know." Then once more Childe Rowland drew the good sword that never struck in vain, and off went the cowherd's head. At last he came to an old woman in a grey cloak, and he asked her if she knew where the dark tower of the King of Elfland might be. "Go on a little farther," said the henwife, "till you come to a steep, round, green hill. You must go round it 3 times widdershins, and as you go you must say, 'Open door, and let me come in.' The 3rd time the door will open, and you may go in." Childe Rowland was just going to ride on when he remembered what he had to do. So out with a good sword that never struck in vain, and off went the henwife's head. On he rode till at last he came to a round green hill, and when he saw that he jumped off his horse. There was a narrow door in the side of it, but it was fast shut. He went round the green hill on foot, widdershins, and as he went he said, open door, and let me come in." Twice he did this and nothing happened. The door was still fast. But the 3rd time the door opened, and Childe Rowland went in. Then the door shut again, and Childe Rowland was alone. It was not exactly dark. There was a kind of twilight or gloaming, and he seemed to be in a passage that was only just wide enough for him to pass. There were neither windows nor lamps, and he couldn't tell where the soft light came from, unless it were through the walls and roof, which seemed to be made of transparent rock. The air was warm, as it always is in Elfland. He went along softly till he saw, at the end of this passage, 2 wide, high doors, and when he pushed on boldly and opened them, he saw a wonderful and glorious sight. Before him was a large and high hall, as high as a great church. The pillars were of gold and silver, and round their tops were wreaths of flowers made of diamonds and emeralds and all manner of precious stones. From the very middle of the high roof there hung, by a gold chain, a huge lamp made of what seemed to be a great pearl, all hollowed out. In the very middle of the pearl was a huge red carbuncle, and this gave light to the whole hall. Far off at the end of the room stood a beautiful couch of silk and gold, and there on the couch whom should he see sitting but his sister, the fair bird Ellen, combing her golden hair with a silver comb. When she saw Childe Rowland, she stood up, and her face was full of fear and sorrow as she spoke to him. "God pity you, poor luckless fool, what have you here to do? Hear you this, my youngest brother, why didn't you bide at home? Had you 100,000 lives, you couldn't spare any a one. But sit you down, but woe, oh woe, whatever you were born, for come the King of Elfland in, your fortune is forlorn." But Childe Rowland greeted her kindly and embraced her, and told her why he had come. When they had sat down together, Childe Rowland asked for news of their 2 brothers. She wept as she told him how first one and then the other had reached the dark tower, but how in the end they had been enchanted by the King of Elfland, and that now each lay in a stone coffin, as if dead. After they had talked a little, Childe Rowland began to feel faint and hungry from his long travels, and then, forgetting all about Merlin's warning, he begged his sister to give him a little food. At that, Bird Ellen looked at him sadly and shook her head. But because she was under a spell, she could do no more by way of warning. Instead, she was obliged to rise and go out, and soon she brought back a golden basin full of bread and milk. Childe Rowland was just going to raise it to his lips, but catching sight of the sad face of his sister, he remembered just in time, and suddenly dashed bowl and all to the ground, saying, "Not a sup will I swallow, not a bit will I bite, till Burd Ellen is free." Just as he spoke, he heard the noise of heavy footsteps, and soon a loud voice crying, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of a Christian man. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll dash his brains from his brain pan." With that, the great doors of the hall burst open, and in rushed the terrible king of Elfland with his drawn sword flashing in his hand. But Childe Rowland was not afraid, for he stood ready with his sword. "Strike then, Bogle, if you dare," he shouted, and rushed to meet the elf king. They fought. For long they fought, and sometimes one seemed to be winning and sometimes the other. But at last Childe Rowland had beaten the king of Elfland down onto his knees, and as he stood over him with his raised sword, the elf king begged for mercy. "I will give you mercy, and spare your life," said Childe Rowland, "if you swear to release my sister from your spells. Then you must raise my brothers to life, and after all that is done, you must let us all go out free from your dark tower." The beaten Bogle had to agree to this, so Childe Rowland let him get up. Then the elf king went to a strong chest, and from it he took a little crystal bottle filled with something blood red. Then Childe Rowland was taken to where his two brothers lay as if dead in their stone coffins. But now, with his red salve, the elf king touched their ears, eyelids, nostrils, lips, and fingertips. No sooner had he done this than they sprang up as well as ever they had been, and told Childe Rowland that their souls had been far away, but had now come back to them. Next the elf king said some words over Burd Ellen, and the spell was taken off her too, and then he gave the little crystal bottle of salve to Childe Rowland. So at last they all passed out of the splendid hall of the defeated elf king. Through the long passage they went, and out of the door, which opened at their touch but shut again behind them. Glad they were to see wholesome daylight again, and to turn their backs on the dark tower. Then, as they went on their homeward way rejoicing, Childe Rowland remembered the hen-wife, the cowherd, and the horse-herd. There they lay, all three, where he had left them, but with a touch of the red salve, Childe Rowland was able to restore them to life. When at last they all reached home, the good queen their mother laughed with joy, and she ordered a great feast, so that everyone, great and small, in the whole kingdom should be able to rejoice with her, because the fair Burd Ellen and her three brothers were safe home again.